Good afternoon. I'm joined today by Deputy Attorney General Monaco, FBI Director Wray, and Assistant Attorney General Olson. Also here are Assistant United States Attorneys from the Eastern District of New York and the District of New Jersey. Over the past week, the Justice Department has taken several actions to disrupt criminal activity by individuals working on behalf of the government of the People's Republic of China. As always, the defendants in these cases are presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Earlier today, in the Eastern District of New York, a complaint was unsealed charging two PRC intelligence officers with attempting to obstruct, influence, and impede a criminal prosecution of a PRC-based telecommunications company. The complaint alleges that in 2019, the defendants directed an employee at a U.S. government law enforcement agency to steal confidential information about the United States criminal prosecution of the company. The defendants believed that they had recruited the U.S. employee as an asset, but in fact, the individual they recruited was actually a double agent working on behalf of the FBI. As the complaint alleges, the defendants paid a bribe to the double agent to obtain non-public information, including files from the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Eastern District. They did so in the hope of obtaining the prosecution strategy memo, confidential information regarding witnesses, trial evidence, and potential new charges to be brought against the company. The double agent provided the defendants with documents that appeared to present some of the information they sought. In fact, the documents were prepared by the U.S. government for the purpose of this investigation and did not reveal actual meetings, communications, or strategies. This was an egregious attempt by PRC intelligence officers to shield a PRC-based company from accountability and to undermine the integrity of our judicial system. Also earlier today, in the District of New Jersey, an indictment was unsealed charging 4 individuals, including 3 PRC intelligence officers, with conspiring to act in the United States as illegal agents on behalf of a foreign government. The indictment alleges that between 2008 and 2018, the defendants used the cover of a purported Chinese academic institute to target, co-opt, and direct individuals in the United States to further the PRC's intelligence mission. Those directives included attempts to procure technology and equipment from the United States and to have it shipped to China. They also included attempts to stop protected First Amendment activities, protests here in the United States, which would have been embarrassing to the Chinese government. Separately, in the Eastern District of New York, the Justice Department charged 7 individuals who were working on behalf of the PRC with engaging in a multi-year campaign of threats and harassment to force a U.S. resident to return to China. Last Thursday, we arrested 2 of those defendants. Those activities were part of the PRC's global extra-legal effort known as Operation Foxhunt. Its purpose is to locate and bring back to China alleged fugitives who have fled to foreign countries, including the United States. The PRC has a history of targeting political dissidents and critics of the government who have sought relief and refuge in other countries. The indictment alleges that the defendants, working at the direction of the government of the PRC, engaged in a campaign of harassment, threats, surveillance, and intimidation aimed at coercing the victim to return to China. We also allege that the defendants threatened and harassed the victim's family members, both in the U.S. and in China. The PRC government forced the victim's nephew to travel from China to the United States to convey the PRC's threats to the victim's son. The defendants threatened the victim, saying that, quote, coming back and turning herself in is the only way out. They showed up at the home of the victim's son in New York. They filed frivolous lawsuits against the victim and his son and said it would be, quote, endless misery for the defendant and son to defend themselves. And they made clear that their harassment would not stop until the victim returned to China. As these cases demonstrate, The government of China sought to interfere with the rights and freedoms of individuals in the United States and to undermine our judicial system that protects those rights. They did not succeed. The Justice Department will not tolerate attempts by any foreign power to undermine the rule of law upon which our democracy is based. We will continue to fiercely protect the rights guaranteed to everyone in our country, and we will defend the integrity of our institutions. Before I turn the podium over to Deputy Attorney General Monaco, I want to recognize the FBI, the National Security Division, and the U.S. Attorney's offices for their extraordinary work on these cases. Now, Deputy Attorney General Monaco.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Mr. Attorney General. The Department of Justice will not tolerate threats from a foreign power to the rights of Americans or to our nation's institutions. As the Attorney General has laid out, the cases unsealed today take place against a backdrop of malign activity from the People's Republic of China that includes espionage, harassment, obstruction of our justice system, and unceasing efforts to steal sensitive U.S. technology. In the words of our intelligence community, China seeks to be a major power on the world stage and to challenge the United States in multiple arenas. Today's cases make clear that Chinese agents will not hesitate to break the law and to violate international norms in the process. Two of those cases, in particular, show the lengths they are willing to go in pursuit of unfair advantage. But the defendants charged today met their match in the agents, analysts, and prosecutors of the Department of Justice. According to one indictment unsealed today, 2 intelligence officers attempted, through bribery and espionage, to obstruct the federal criminal prosecution of a global telecommunications company headquartered in the PRC. The defendants attempted to bribe someone they believed was an insider to steal the prosecutor's playbook, including who the prosecutors were meeting with and what they would argue in court, all so that the company could unlawfully gain an edge and undermine the government's case. But the insider flipped the script on the defendants by working not for them, but for Team America. The defendants' desperate efforts to sabotage this prosecution expose the PRC's government's commitment to tilting the playing field in favor of Chinese corporations abroad. Far from accepting the rule of law, PRC agents sought to use bribes to help the Chinese company obstruct and evade it. This case exposes the interconnection between PRC intelligence officers and Chinese companies, and it demonstrates once again why such companies, especially in the telecommunications industry, shouldn't be trusted to securely handle our sensitive personal data and communications. In another matter announced today, individuals associated with the Chinese government allegedly continued its relentless campaign to gain access to our technology, recruit agents, and attempt to stifle the free exchange of ideas. According to the indictment, over a 10-year period, the defendants and others used a fake think tank to try to recruit a former federal law enforcement and state homeland security official and others through a variety of means, including with all expense-paid trips to China. In each case, though, the plots failed because the men and women of the Department of Justice defended our institutions and thwarted the persistent threat posed by agents of the PRC. I want to thank the agents, analysts, and prosecutors in all 3 of these cases for their tireless work on behalf of the American people. And now I'll turn the podium over to FBI Director Wray.
Well, thank you. First, Let me begin by pointing out that 10 of the 13 charged individuals we're discussing today are Chinese intelligence officers and Chinese government officials. They're charged in 3 different cases that might seem at first glance to be about unrelated issues. However, and this is something that I've been talking about for years now, each of these cases lays bare the Chinese government's flagrant violation of international laws as they work to project their authoritarian view around the world, including within our own borders. In all 3 of these cases, and frankly in thousands of others, we've found the Chinese government threatening established democratic norms and the rule of law as they work to undermine U.S. economic security and fundamental human rights, including those of Americans. We also see a coordinated effort across the Chinese government to lie, cheat, and steal their way into unfairly dominating entire technology sectors, putting competing U.S. companies out of business. As I've pointed out before, their economic assault and their rights violations are part of the same problem. They both flout the rule of law. And one of the purposes of the Chinese government's repression is to make it easier to steal our innovation. They try to silence anyone who fights back against their theft, companies, politicians, individuals, just as they try to silence anyone who fights back against their other aggressions. And in our cases today, we've got yet another example, their attempted obstruction of an independent judicial process to give underhanded help to one of their companies accused of breaking our intellectual property laws and deny justice to that company's victims. Since I started as FBI director, I've been repeatedly sounding the alarm about the Chinese government's disregard for fair business practices, for international norms, and for the rule of law. The FBI has been reaching out and warning, and more importantly, helping the communities the Chinese government targets. Businesses of every size and in almost every sector, from agriculture to green tech to semiconductors, the Chinese American community, academia and state and local governments, and our foreign partners around the world. Today, every one of those partners is awake and alert to that threat in a way that just wasn't always true 5 years ago. And our success bringing more and more partners to this fight highlights something else important. Beijing may think our adherence to the rule of law is a weakness, but they're wrong. We're disrupting Chinese government criminality and aggression not just while adhering to our values, but by adhering to our values. Our democratic and legal processes arm us with weapons that China doesn't have, among others, real partners and allies. And our partnerships help protect the American people every day. Today's cases are no different. We couldn't have accomplished this work without our foreign partners and the U.S. academic community in particular. One reason we've had so much success bringing partners to this fight against the Chinese government's aggression is that they see through Beijing's hypocrisy. For example, they see the type of CCP hypocrisy on display in our fox hunt case today, yet another case where the Chinese government officials and co-conspirators mercilessly harassed a naturalized U.S. citizen to try to force him to return to China against his will. They accused the victim in this case of embezzling money, but 2 of the subjects who targeted him, 2 of the defendants charged today, are themselves actually involved in a scheme to launder millions of dollars. And as if that weren't enough evidence that the real purpose of their operation was political, they gave their victim a deadline to return by, the 20th CCP Congress earlier this month. They're focused on repression, not law enforcement. But our partners also see the CCP's broader hypocrisy, the fact that while the CCP claims to stand for sovereignty and non-interference in other states' affairs, what the Chinese government actually does is interfere with sovereign governments around the world whenever doing so suits Beijing. Here, interfering with our independent judiciary, violating both our sovereignty and the norms of police conduct to run lawless intimidation campaigns here in our backyard, and corrupting our academic freedom to further their campaign of repression and theft. The FBI is going to continue to say what we mean and mean what we say. So our partners, both here and abroad, many of whom tell us they're battling Chinese aggression themselves, know they can depend on us against the Chinese government and countless other dangers. Finally, let me urge any person or company being targeted or approached by the Chinese government to come to the FBI for help. No American citizen, resident, company, or university should battle this threat alone, and you don't have to. You can report information through your local FBI field office or online at fbi.gov, and know that our quarrel is with the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party, not the Chinese people, and certainly not Chinese Americans. I want to congratulate all the FBI special agents, intelligence analysts, and professional staff who have worked on these cases, as well as our partners at CBP and the IRS. I also want to take the opportunity to specifically thank the government employee who played such a critical role in the obstruction of justice case. You know, we employ double agents frequently in our counterintelligence operations against the PRC's services and other foreign threats. And given the nature of that work, we very rarely get a chance to publicly thank them. So I am delighted to have that chance today. Thank you.
Good afternoon. These three cases highlight once again the threat that individuals acting at the direction of the PRC government pose to our institutions and to the rights of people inside the United States. These operations include the harassment and attempted repatriation by force of individuals living in the United States, the effort to corrupt our judicial system, and the attempt to recruit agents for the PRC under the cover of a phony academic organization. We will not tolerate these actions. The National Security Division, which I am privileged to lead, was created to take on our most significant national security threats. These cases reflect the breadth and the persistence of hostile nation-state activity. These actions threaten our sovereignty and they threaten the rule of law, and countering these threats is a cornerstone of the mission of the National Security Division. Our success in disrupting these threats depends on our strong partnerships with the U.S. Attorney's offices, with the FBI, and with the U.S. intelligence community. So I want to take this opportunity to recognize the exemplary work of the U.S. Attorney's offices that made these cases possible. First, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of New York, that's led by Breon Peace, and I want to thank Assistant U.S. Attorney Alex Solomon, who is with me here on stage, AUSA's Meredith Arfa and Antoinette Rangel, as well as National Security Division Trial Attorney Scott Claffey. I also want to recognize Philip Sellinger, the U.S. Attorney for the District of New Jersey. We are grateful for the work of Assistant U.S. Attorneys Brendan Day, who is also here, and Joyce Malliette. Along with the FBI and the National Security Division, these offices and the attorneys in these offices are on the front lines every day, working to defend our national security and to deliver justice on behalf of the American people. Thank you.
We got everybody? Okay. In that case, we're ready for some questions.
Thank you. I was hoping one of you, maybe the FBI director, could talk a little bit about the timing of this announcement coming at the end of the party Congress and the beginning of Xi's third term, and whether what kind of a signal it is intended to send to China at this delicate political time. And then, Attorney General, I have a question for you as well about another large company. Okay, all right. Make sure you come back to me, please.
So we bring cases when they're ready, and that's probably the simplest answer and most straightforward answer to that. As far as what signal they send, if the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party, continues to violate our laws, they're going to keep encountering the FBI.
All right, I'm back.
With regard to another large company, a judge on Friday said that the families who were victims of the Boeing 737 MAX crash have standing to challenge the settlement in that case as crime victims. And I just am wondering if DOJ leadership is worried about the Boeing settlement, that it could be vacated now because prosecutors seemingly violated the crime victims' rights.
So it's a matter, obviously, from the question, part of ongoing litigation, so I'm just not going to be able to answer it.
First question for the FBI director, and then I have one for the Attorney General. Director Wray, given the brazen nature of these allegations, I was wondering if you could give us an update on the level of activity you see from the PRC in terms of the number of open cases that you have at any given moment, and what this says about the potential for the midterms in terms of Chinese manipulation and or the Russians as well.
Well, as far as the brazenness of the Chinese government's threat, these cases, I think, are part and parcel of a broader effort that we're seeing and have seen for some time. I think I recently commented that when I last looked, we were opening a new China counterintelligence investigation about every 12 hours. And it's about a 1,300% increase from several years ago. As far as the election itself, the threat of any nation state to our election system, to influence, to interfere, is something that we have to all remain vigilant about. In many ways, malign foreign influence, whether it's from the Chinese government, the Russian government, or other governments, is not just an election cycle issue, but a 365-day-a-year problem. And that's why we created the Foreign Influence Task Force several years ago, and that's why we work so closely with our partners in the intelligence community, with the Department of Homeland Security, and in particular with state and local election officials, which, of course, as you know, is where the responsibility for, the primary responsibility for the integrity of our election systems lies.
General Garland, given the nature of the Mar-a-Lago investigation, I was wondering, can you guarantee to the American public when the investigation is complete that there will be transparency so the country writ large will know whether there were criminal offenses that took place or not?
Look, this is an ongoing investigation, so I'm really not able to comment. We speak through our filings and through the cases we bring. That's the only way we speak.
I have a question about this particular case, and it's for anyone. I assume, first of all, that these two individuals in the first case and the EY case are not in custody. Is there any prospect of getting them into custody? And then, secondly, is there any sort of suggestion that Huawei was connected in any way to these two individuals in terms of inducing their behavior or being aware of their behavior?
I'm going to give Mr. Solomon a chance to answer these questions.
We're not going to comment on the identity of the company involved in the first charging instrument, and we are always interested in apprehending individuals who violate our laws and who are named in charging instruments.
But even without naming the company, is there any allegation that they were aware or participants or cognizant of this?
There's an allegation that one of the officers in the complaint refers to directions from the company to arrange a meeting, which the officer refuses.
Attorney General Garland, this is midterms related. Have you been 15 days out? We're getting closer.
When you start a question like that, you pretty much know what my answer is going to be, don't you?
There have been concerns about intimidation, people armed at polling places in Arizona, problems in Houston, Harris County, asking for DOJ's help. Are you concerned about what you're seeing this far out, and will the Department of Justice get involved?
The Justice Department has an obligation to to guarantee a free and fair vote by everyone who's qualified to vote, and will not permit voters to be intimidated.
Quick side question, if I could ask. Was it a mistake to get rid of the China initiative?
So I think as these cases make quite clear, we are unrelenting in our efforts to prevent the government of China from economic espionage, from operating in the United States as foreign agents, from trying to affect our rule of law, our judicial system, from trying to target and recruit Americans to help them. I'm going to let Mr. Olson say more about the China initiative, but I think this case should be very clear that we have not in any way changed our focus on those kind of behaviors by China.
So as the Attorney General said, we have stayed very focused on the threat that the PRC poses to our values, to our institutions. We speak through our cases, and we speak through those cases today. And I think what we are charging today in terms of the range and persistence of the threat we see from the PRC demonstrates that we have remained relentless and focused on that threat, and we will continue to be focused on that threat going forward.
You just got rid of it in name, essentially?
So we ended the China initiative earlier this year after a lengthy review and adopted a broader strategy focused on the range of threats that we face from a variety of nation states, and that's the strategy we're carrying forward.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you.